my name's Kelsey Jones. I'm the executive editor at Search Engine Journal, and I'm happy to be joined here today with Debra Jasper. She is the CEO and founder of Mindset Digital. Debra, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me.
So I know you're going to talk about the power of visual storytelling at PubCon. Do you want to kind of just tell our audience what you consider visual storytelling to be?
Sure. So here at PubCon, one of the critical challenges that everyone faces is they're dealing in a lot of complex information. So when you're thinking about SEO and all of the kinds of things that people are trying to convey here, how do you get people to tune in? That's a key question here at PubCon. What we talk about is how do you tell your stories more visually. So the audience has changed. Our audience has gotten a lot more visually sophisticated.
Yeah.
And when you think about all of the latest, most powerful channels are, Instagram and Snapchat. We're telling stories through Vine videos and Periscope videos. So when you're thinking about visual storytelling today, you really have to think about how you're unpacking everything from your data to your presentations to anything that any way that you're conveying information. You want to think about how are you conveying it more visually.
Yeah, I like that. So do you think it's useful for key points that you're making in the content you create to also have a visual representation of that, either through infographics or, graphics for your blog post?
Exactly. So one of the things I'll be talking about in the keynote tomorrow is seeing always wins. 70% of the information we take in through our eyes. So a really critical way that you get people, we know we have 8-second attention spans today.
I know.
Everyone's checking their phones constantly. It's just tough to get people to slow down and tune into what you have to say. So the more that you can tell your stories in visual ways, the more you can unpack them, the more you can add narrative a lot. Our brains are wired for narrative. So people really have to think through more carefully today. They can't just put up an infographic and say, I know you can't see this but, or a chart, right? And that's hard to decipher, and then think people are going to slow down and tune in.
So do you think it's useful for content marketers or people who write a lot of content to kind of cross-train in graphic design, or what would look best translated visually, or do you think that's better left to designers?
I don't think it has to be overdone. So, sites like Canva, you can do really easy infographic kinds of things, but when you're thinking about your posts, you've got to think more about what's the visual that goes with this. So I think a lot of content has changed. I was an old school journalist in another life, so I was a print reporter, and I came to visual storytelling late. So really when YouTube came on and when you started saying, wow, look how many more views Facebook posts get when you add visuals or video. And today it's a given, but then we still tell a lot of our stories in old school ways. So even though online we're doing more creative things visually, you look at presentations today and you realize, wow, we always say PowerPoint was invented in the 80s, but we can't use it as if it still is the 80s. So helping people even rethink how they're telling their internal stories. So maybe you've got to get your boss on board, or you've got to get your colleague on board. So I wrote my dissertation on the art of powerful storytelling.
That's cool.
And now we've added sort of the art of powerful storytelling in a digital age. It's not just, though, we still value text. So in addition to the keynote tomorrow, I'm doing a breakout session on your personal brand. And we'll be talking more about thought leadership as well. And people often say LinkedIn, get it, done it, been there. But even there, are they telling a mini magazine bio story of them in the first person? Or do they have that visual gallery? Do they have a lot posted in that visual gallery? So it's not that we aren't, we're not privileging text, put my PhD hat on for 2 seconds, as much as we used to, but we still, in addition to telling visual stories, we still have to tell great narratives, and that can be in text as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. You touched on LinkedIn. I know they they work with SlideShare, and you can embed presentations into your LinkedIn profile. So I think, like touching on the personal brand, like you said, there's a lot of ways to use good visuals to kind of describe your expertise and what you're doing.
Yeah, and it makes a big impact. So I'm here at PubCon, and it's funny, but I remember when the organizer was considering me for a keynote, he looked at my LinkedIn profile. And of course, I have a highlights reel of my keynotes there, and then he could see that, and then I got invited to give a main stage keynote here. So LinkedIn still makes a big impact in terms of your personal brand. But it's also that critical part of telling a visual story on your LinkedIn profile. So there is, even LinkedIn says, don't just say it, display it.
Yeah.
So really in any platform we're on today, we're all thinking about that visual storytelling component. So we'll be talking more about that. The second thing I'll be talking about tomorrow is also in terms of hyper distraction, is something we call serve it up. So in addition to telling visual stories, you have to serve up your stories in what we call SOS, short, organized, and skimmable ways.
Oh, I like that.
Because increasingly, it's not enough. You can't just put out a lot of text and a lot of context and think that people are going to wade through it. So even if you are using text, it has to be a lot shorter, it has to be bullet points, it has to be skimmable, and even your text has to be visual.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to look at it in a visual way.
Break it up, you make it easier to read.
Yeah. So we say it's not about dumbing it down, but it is about breaking it down, and I think that that's a big shift in even how we think about text.
Yeah.
So it's funny. But
Yeah, I like that. Well, Debra, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Again, this is Debra Jasper and Kelsey Jones at PubCon.
Hi, my name is Brent Satoris. I'm here with Search Engine Journal. I'm joined today by Gary Yesh, Chief of Sunshine and Happiness at Google.
That's correct.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
There's been a lot of discussion, I don't know, a lot of discussion, but there's been some decent discussion recent about Penguin. It's,
I never heard about penguins.
No. They've been running around here chasing you, so. Becoming more of a part of the everyday algorithm, the live algorithm.
Yep.
And
Today's summit is the 3 takeaways structure.
Yes.
I'm leaving with way more.
I also like the single session format for conferences.
I agreed to be a speaker here because I think above all else, the quality of people who attend the meeting, something to be said about the fact that you can't just, hey, come. It's by invitation only.
What I really liked about this meeting